urgent messengers arrived in Bethlehem, requiring every able-bodied man to rally to the king. The Philistines were coming. Jesse was too frail to go, but sent his 3 oldest sons. David begged to be included, but he was told not to be silly. "Stay home and watch the sheep." Since Saul was occupied mustering his army and had little need of a musician, David was stuck at home full-time, caring for the flock, far from the action. "Davy," Father said one evening, "tomorrow I want you to go to the front and see how your brothers are doing. Oh, and take these supplies with you. Give them to the quartermaster." He didn't need telling twice. Off he went at first light. He found the army drawn up on a bluff beside the valley of Elah. They were well dug in, having been there for 6 weeks already. The Philistines were similarly hunkered down on the opposite side of the valley. David delivered the supplies and then found his brothers, who were none too pleased to see him. "So, who's watching the sheep, Davy? Come to watch the battle, eh, you conceited little runt?" They couldn't forgive him for the suggestion that he might someday be king. There was a strange atmosphere amongst the troops that David couldn't immediately discern. Fear. Yes, that was it. Fear was paralyzing the whole army. You could smell it. But why were they so afraid? Then a great shout rang across the valley. A war cry, perhaps. Was this an attack? David ran to look, and was in time to see a giant of a man striding down the slope opposite. He was indeed a terrifying sight, 10 foot tall if he was an inch, and armed to kill. His voice rumbled across no man's land. "This day I defy Israel. I challenge you to one-on-one combat. Send me your best man. If he kills me, then we Philistines will be your subjects. But if I win..." There was silence in the ranks of Israel, each man shrinking back into his own private place of fear. "Just who does he think he is to defy the army of Israel?" came an adolescent voice. "Is there a reward offered as an incentive for one who kills him?" "Actually, the king has offered a huge reward, life exemption from taxes and the princess in marriage." So what are you waiting for?" asked David, raising the question and achieving a slight shift in attitude amongst those who heard him. Was it cynicism or a spark of hope? His brothers told him to be quiet, but David wandered away, persisting with his question. A stirring of hope rippled through the ranks. The swell reached King Saul, who was standing in his royal tent talking with Abner, his general, and wondering how to break the deadlock.
"Young man,"
he addressed the youth for whom he'd sent,
"I hear that you've been asking questions, unsettling my men."
There was something familiar about the boy. One of his court musicians? Yeah, that was it. "Sir, I'm willing to fight this man." The offer from a naive teenager was beneath contempt. I'm a shepherd from Bethlehem, and I care for my father's flock, and I have recently killed both a lion and a bear that threatened my animals, and I will surely kill that Philistine who dares to defy the armies of the living God. The God who delivered me from those predators will deliver me from that brute also." There was something about the absolute confidence of this youth that got through to the king. And anyway, it wasn't as though others were lining up to volunteer for the job, so what had Saul to lose?
"Okay, kid, you're on."
Declining Saul's offer of armor, David took but his leather sling and shepherd's staff and set off down into the valley. A strange silence came over the troops above him on either side of the valley. What was to be made of this new development? David might naturally have felt alone and scared. "Even though I walk through the valley of death, I will not be afraid, for I'm not alone. You're with me. Your club and your crook give me confidence." Humming the words to his own song lent him courage. He paused as he reached the stream bed at the bottom of the valley. Carefully he selected a handful of smooth, round stones, and slipped them into his pouch. And jumping lightly over the stream, he advanced on his enemy.
Am I a dog that you come at me with a stick?
The giant snarled. You come armed with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come in the name of the Lord Almighty. The mention of God incensed the man, and invoking the name of his own God, he called down a terrible curse on David.
Come here, you little rat. The crows will be pecking your eyes out and the foxes chewing on your bones before the day's done.
Well, no, actually, the shoe is on the other foot. Before this day is over, I'm going to strike you down and cut off your head. And let's not disappoint those birds. They'll be feasting on the carcasses of all you Philistines by nightfall. Selecting a stone from his pouch, he tucked it into the leather pad of his sling and began to whir the thong. In a voice that could clearly be heard by the whole Philistine force, all straining over the lip of the hill to see their champion kill the little Hebrew, he said, Let the whole world know for certain that there is a God in Israel. It's not sword or spear that prevails. The battle is in the hands of the Lord, and it's he who will give you all into our hands. As he spoke, the whirring of the sling increased, and at just the right moment the stone was released, shooting straight and true to strike the giant between the eyes. Like a great cedar, he toppled to the ground, stunned. Not wasting a second, David ran forward and pulled the massive sword from Goliath's scabbard. Before the Philistine could regain control of his wits, David drove the blade through his chest. Then, to make sure of his kill, he hacked off his victim's head, holding it up by the hair for all to see. He was still standing there when a wave of wildly yelling Israeli soldiers surged down the hill, past him, then up the opposite slope in pursuit of the terrified Philistines. As the sound of the battle faded into the distance, David made his way back up to the Israeli camp, lugging the massive Philistine head and dragging the sword that was far too big to stick in his belt. It was there that General Abner found him and brought him to the king.
And bring that head with you, kid. What's your name, young man?
Saul asked as David stood before him, still clutching the dripping head by the hair. I'm David, son of Jesse of Bethlehem. I work part-time as one of your musicians.
Well, let's make that a full-time job from now on. I need you around.